Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Janae, so what's up? In this video, I'll be sharing how to create components in Figma. Now, components are basically design elements that you can reuse over and over again so that you don't have to spend so much time redesigning the same thing over and over again. So think of things like buttons or icons or pretty much any design element that you want to use. So in this video, I'll show you how to create a component and then how to set up some simple interactions so that you can use them in your designs. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Okay, so the first component we're gonna make is a button with a hover interaction. So in order to do that, I'm gonna just grab my text tool first to create a button. So we're just gonna call this button. Let's change the text a little bit. Then I'm going to hit Shift A to add auto layout. And let's add some padding. I'm going to add a stroke here. And let's make the color blue. Let's change the stroke to about 6. Okay, so now that I have my button, let's actually change the frame name. And I'm going to name this button state. So after I have my button, I'm going to go over here where it says create component. It's this little icon that looks like a diamond shape. I'm just going to click that. And now my button is actually a component. And over here too, we can see under assets, we can see all the different components that we just made so that you can always come back to it. So over here in your property section, we can see this little diamond shape, and this is your add variant. So once I click that, it actually duplicates my button, and then I can create anything I want with this second button. So we're gonna change this word to, let's say hover, and let's just make the buttons the same size. Then I'm gonna add a fill to this, and we can just make it the same color. Let's change the text to white. And over here under property 1, you'll see default and you'll see variant 2. Our default is this button, the first one we made, and then the variant 2 was our second button. We can change the names on these two. So I'm going to change this to say, instead of default, we're going to say button. And over here, I'm going to say hover. Okay, so now that we have our first component set, I'm going to go over to prototype and I'm going to show you a quick interaction just so that you can see how this will work in a real scenario. And once I click this button, you'll notice these little white dots that appear, and that's just to create any interaction. So once I click this white dot right here and I start to drag, you'll notice the interaction menu will pop up. And so here, I can add an interaction from this button to this button. So for here on my button state, I want my trigger actually to say while hovering. So while I'm hovering over this button, I wanted to switch over to this hover button. So the action I wanted to say change to, and I wanted to change to property 1 and hover. And for the animation, I wanted to say instant. So I'm going to hop over to design, and I'm just going to create a frame so that we can see how our button will work. This is our main component set, but I can always duplicate these buttons. So if I drag and duplicate this, and then once I click on frame and then hit play, I can actually see how my button will work. So yeah, now you can see our first interaction. As I'm hovering, it switches over to the second button that I just made. Cool, so now that we have our first interaction, I actually want this hover state to now click. So in order to do that, I'm going to make a second component. Now you'll see if I added a click button to this component set and then go over to prototype, you'll see that it doesn't allow me to add a click interaction here. So I have to make a separate component. So instead of adding our click button here, I'm going to duplicate this button, but then I'm going to just say detach instance. And that's going to turn it into a regular button without any components added to it. So then we're going to just change this to say click. Let's hop over to design. I'm going to change this button color to a darker color so that it looks like a click state. And we're going to change the stroke as well to match the same color. Let's just name this click state. We're going to take this first button out of this component set that we made and we're going to drag it over. So now I have the first button that I made with the same hover interaction with this new click state button. So I'm going to select both of these. And over here under our component icon, I'm going to actually drop down and hit create component set. And that's going to put both of these into another component. So now when I go over to prototype, I can click this button, drag, and on click, I want it to change to my click state. And I want the animation to be instant. So then I'm gonna drag my second button over here. So now when I hit play on this, this is our button 1 that just has the hover, and this is our button 2 that has the hover, but when I click, it changes to our click state. Okay, so for this next example, I'm gonna show you how to do a slideshow transition. So I'm gonna start with taking a simple rectangle. Let's just round the corners a little bit. I'm gonna fill it with an image. I'm gonna go over to my plugin Pexels, and I'm gonna grab a stock photo. We're just gonna say ice cream. And I'm just gonna add 3 circles at the bottom to show that this is like a slideshow. Select all 3 of these and add Shift A to add auto layout. And I'm gonna make these 2 circles like a darker gray and this circle like a lighter gray. Let's select both of these and add auto layout. Okay, so I'm gonna duplicate this like 2 more times. I'm gonna call this slide 1 and then slide 2, slide 3. I'm gonna just change these images out. And also let's swap these circles out. So on the second slide, I want this lighter circle to be in the middle. And then here, I want the lighter circle to be at the end. Okay, so now that we have these 3 slides, I'm gonna just select everything. And then I'm gonna go over to the create component and I'm going to say create component set. So now we have 3 different components here. And I'm just gonna go over to prototype. So for the first slide, when I click, I'm just gonna drag it over. And so for the trigger, I'm going to say on click, I want it to change to slide 2. And for the animation, we can keep it instant. And then I'm going to do the same for slide 2. So I'm going to just drag it over. On click, I'm going to change to slide 3. Finally, I'm just going to add slide 3 back over to slide 1. So now when we go over to design, I'm just going to create a frame, just duplicate our first slide. So now when we hit play, now we can see our slideshow is working. And we could definitely build off of this, like maybe this could live in a website or something. But yeah, this is how you can create this. Okay, for this last example, it's pretty much the same as how we did the first example with a hover, but we're gonna add a little bit more to it. So this is a design card that I made earlier. So in order to make this, I just created a rectangle and we're gonna round the corners a little bit. And let's add a gradient to this. So I'm gonna go over to fill, let's hit gradient, and I'm gonna match the colors here. And I'm gonna flip the gradient because I want the darker color to be on top. I'm gonna make this a frame, and then I'm just gonna duplicate the same text over. Let's add an image. Then I'm gonna add this heart here. Okay, so now that I have this frame again, I'm just gonna call this card 1, and then I'm just gonna duplicate it. So now we have card 2. And for card 2, I want this to be slightly different. So I'm almost imagining how I want this transition to happen. So for this slide, I actually want there to be like a slight shadow underneath this card so it looks like it's hovering. So in order to do that, I'm just gonna select this frame and I'm gonna go under effects and I'm just gonna create a shadow. And you can see as I'm changing the X and Y axis, it's creating a shadow. Let's blur it out a little bit. And I want this shadow to be a little bit softer, so I actually have to add a fill here. And let's round the corners. Let's make it around 63. And let's say clip contents. I'm gonna bring the opacity down a little bit. Okay, now you can see we have like a slight shadow effect that's happening here. And also I want this background to get a little bit lighter just so that it looks like it's being highlighted. So I'm just gonna click on this rectangle layer and I'm just gonna change the lighter gradient color just to be a little bit lighter. Finally, I want this little heart icon to look like it's appearing when it's being hovered over. So in order to do that, I'm gonna bring this heart down a little bit lower and then I'm gonna make the appearance say 0. So now I'm just gonna select everything and then I'm gonna say create component set. So now once I go over to prototype, I'm gonna click this card. I'm gonna drag it over to my second card. And for the trigger, I'm gonna say while hovering. I want the action to change to card 2. And this time I want the animation to be smart animate. And I want it to ease in and out. So now when I hop back over to design, I'm just gonna create a frame and let's duplicate our card. And now when we hit play and we hover, we can see the transition happening. It's pretty cool. This is probably one of my favorite transition features, and I love Figma Animate because it automatically does most of the work for you so that you don't have to create every single keyframe. So yeah, now we made a button component, a button click component, we have a slideshow with images, and we have a hover component with a little bit of animation. So yeah, guys, that's pretty much how to set up components in Figma. Let me know if you guys have any questions in the comment section below, and feel free to use these for your next designs. And also, if you've made it this far and you're not subscribed yet, we're pretty much besties now. So I'll catch you guys in my next video. Until next time, peace.